We've discussed Perth's Metro Area Express light rail proposal in a previous video, but we deliberately left out one important detail, and that is the route the tramway would have taken through Perth CBD, which is a pretty important decision. It was also the most controversial aspect of the proposal, which resulted in some pretty interesting political stuff. Before we go on any further, if you haven't seen our previous Metro Air Express video, then we would highly recommend you watch that video first, then come back to this one. There's a link to the video in the top right corner of your screen and down in the description section. And on our channel we have made plenty of videos on other light rail proposals and on our own tramway at Whiteman Park. We're even working on multiple History Explainer videos, including one on Fremantle's tramway system, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Here on the proposed network map you can see the confirmed light rail alignment, as well as these two green boxes. These indicate sections where the alignment of the tramway hasn't been confirmed. Unfortunately, there wasn't any information on the section around West Perth and Subiaco, so we will only briefly be covering this section at the end of the video. The other green box, and the main topic of today's video, does however have plenty of information. Now you might be wondering why it is so complicated to plan a route for trams through the CBD. Well, planning a route through arguably one of the most important areas within a city is no small task, and there's lots of considerations which need to be made. For example, the Hay Street Mall has narrow streets, heaps of pedestrians use Perth Underground Station, and St George's Terrace is a very important cross-city road. In the end, 3 different options for the CBD alignment were presented for public comment. These were through the Hay Street Mall, shown by the green line on the diagram, the terraces, shown by the purple line, and the couplet, shown by the orange lines. Many years ago, Hay Street and William Street both carried trams. In fact, the tramway along Hay Street was the first section of the Perth Tramways to be opened by the private company Perth Electric Tramways Limited on September the 29th, 1899. Fast forward back to the 21st century and trams could have returned to Hay and William Streets. Trams coming from Mirrabooka would have run down William Street before coming to a T-junction with the Netherlands to Causeway section. It's important to note for this option that all track through the CBD would be double track, but we'll come back to this a bit later. This option was favoured by the state government of the time as it would have a minimal impact on existing CBD road traffic, as trams would be running through the Hay Street pedestrian mall. Not to mention passengers would be delivered into the heart of the CBD's commercial centre along Hay Street. This also presented an opportunity to replace the Red Cat bus service, which back in 2013 carried around 15,000 passengers per day. But perhaps of more importance to commuters was that this option would present the fastest travel times, as it was the most direct, and we all love to get to our destination a couple of minutes earlier. Unfortunately, like everything in life, there's an opportunity cost should this route have been chosen. Firstly, during the construction phase, there would have been major disruptions to businesses, as most of the mall would need to be closed to pedestrians. Now remember before how we talked about all the tracks being double track? Well, there was one slight problem with this. The Hay Street Mall might not have been wide enough to accommodate double track. Though this was heavily debated at the time, it remains unknown whether this was actually feasible due to the project being cancelled. The terraces option completely avoids this problem by running down St George's and Adelaide terraces. thus not travelling through the Hay Street Mall, and would introduce trams to the terraces for the first time. This was the option that the City of Perth Council supported, and they even developed these concept images to show what they envisioned this route to look like. The terraces are wider than Hay Street, so there is more room for trams to be segregated from general traffic, and it is also a major bus corridor, allowing some bus routes to be replaced by trams, though the terraces were considered too far away from the existing Red Cat route for it to effectively replace that bus service. The plan was for the terraces to be reduced from 2 lanes per side to 1 lane per side, with buses and trams running in the middle. Other plans even suggested removing general traffic from the terraces completely. Now, while this route bypasses the commercial core of the CBD, it directly serves the major employment areas of the CBD, with many of Perth's tall office buildings being located on the terraces. And tall buildings mean more offices, which have more office workers, which leads to greater patronage for trams. But one of the goals of Max was to bring new development to the city, and the terraces were already pretty developed. After all, that's where all the tall buildings are. Nevertheless, this option was by far the easiest to build, because it completely avoids pedestrian malls, as mentioned before, and thus the engineering challenges associated with that. The final option was the couplet, and unlike the other 2 routes, this one would utilise single track through the CBD. Trams from Mirrabooka would use a single track section along Murray and Barrack Streets, while trams travelling to Mirrabooka would travel along a single track section through the Hay Street Mall. This was probably the worst out of the 3 options, as there were major engineering challenges, particularly with the Murray Street pedestrian bridges not being high enough for trams to pass under with overhead wires, thus requiring either a wire-free section or the ground to be lowered to allow trams to pass under. Though running along Murray Street did conveniently place trams right next to Perth Underground Railway Station, allowing for easy interchanges with suburban trains. But trams would only be running in one direction, so if you were here on Barrack Street and wanted to catch a train from Perth Underground, you would need to catch a tram down Barrack Street, then change trams at Hay Street to head up William Street to arrive at Perth Underground. A journey taking a much longer time, and it would definitely be quicker to just walk. Single track sections are also not great for future-proofing your tram network, because inevitably you will build more tram routes into the CBD, and the single track sections are a serious capacity constraint. This is also the most indirect route, and trams need to run slower through pedestrian malls, just like how trams do through the Village Mall in Whiteman Park to avoid hitting pedestrians. So that's the 3 options for the tramway through the CBD. Since the project was cancelled, we'll never get to know which option was chosen, but it probably would have been either the Hay Street or Terraces options. Now let's discuss this other green box. This is the part of the tramway where trams heading towards Nedlands along Hay Street would need to turn onto Thomas Street. Now it could just simply use the existing intersection between Hay and Thomas Streets, but there are also some other options as well. Alternatively, trams could turn down Collins Street, which once upon a time also carried trams, and then they could turn onto Kings Park Road, where trams could stop outside Kings Park, providing tourists and locals with easy access to one of Perth's biggest tourist attractions. Then trams could continue down Kings Park Road and turn onto Thomas Street from here. Or trams could follow the alignment of the previous tramway to Nedlands by continuing straight at the Hay and Thomas Street intersection, and then turn down Rokeby Road, before joining back onto Thomas Street. This has some merit as there are plenty of businesses along this part of Hay Street, but on the downside it isn't as direct, so there would be increased journey times. Now before we finish this video, we were able to find this map showing the possible extensions of the MAX network, which we discussed in our previous video, though without this map. If you want to read more about this project, we would suggest checking out the web archived MAX website, and we'll put a link to this down in the comment section. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you are interested in learning more about Western Australia's light rail proposals or WA's tramway history, then make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos. And check out this playlist with all our other WA light rail proposal videos.